Hey Quilties, it's time for another dual process. I'm Karen Marchetti, and this time Ava Birch and I are working on this chain on point quilt. We both have an awesome idea for you, so grab your printable and we'll get started. Hey guys, it's Karen. So as you can see in my little drawing, we're going to have feathers, a little bit of ruler work, and a whole bunch of little scrollies, swirls, curls, whatever you want to call them. And I think it kind of brings a cohesion to the quilt top. So we're going to be working in this area on our first pass. We're assuming we can fit that in our first pass. And we're going to keep our feathers going like this in a clockwise pattern. Okay, so let me get rid of all that. Just trying to keep you in my thought process. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to ditch that and then fill in my feathers. And I'm just doing a swirl with a little half feather or bump back feather, whatever you want to call it. And you can do whatever feather you want, whatever you're most comfortable with, or you can just do a bunch of swirls, whatever works. And we'll ditch that, do our next feather. So we're kind of doing like a ditch as you go. And then we'll come back and get anything that we've missed after the fact. Okay, I'm going to ditch that. And of course, this would be much neater if you were stitching. I'm drawing on a digital whiteboard, so it is a little slippery. Okay, one little swirly. Again, ditch that. Finish off your feathers over here. Just doing whatever you want. If you want to do normal feathers or swirly feathers, whatever you want. And then we'll ditch that. And then I'm going to come back and ditch around these feathers. Again, being careful on my backtracks. So now I'm right here. I'm going to go right into the ruler work, which is just an echo, and then fill that with swirls. And we're here, and now we'll come over here and we can do that continuous curve over here. Again, using the ditch to cut through. Repeating your ruler work here, and you may need to mark that center in chalk, and that's fine. And then your echo, and then your swirlies. Ditch over to here, do your ruler work, your continuous curve. And then your ruler work in this corner. Fill in your swirlies. When you get here, you can go back and ditch anything that you've missed. And that sets us up to start our continuous curve across the entire quilt. So we'll come down here. We'll start that continuous curve. And we're using the continuous curve to travel to get over to here. And we're just going to do this all the way across and fill in the rest on our way back. So on the return pass is when you fill in the bottom half. And again, we're going to stop right at that point. We'll leave the rest for the next pass, because that should probably be about all that you can fit on your frame. Just going point to point with your continuous curve until we come back to here. So now that I'm here, we're going to ditch up to here, head to that center and back using a curved ruler. Or you can freehand it if you can. I can't. I'd have to use a curved ruler. But we're just going to create a little frame and then an echo. And then we'll stitch down to this one, frame, echo, over to here, frame, echo, and then finish that. So then of course we'd have to tie off, and then we'll come over to this one and repeat the same process. Ditch, curve, echo, ditch, curve, echo, ditch after. It works either way. You can do the ditching first or after. Okay, so after you've done that, now we have to finish out these feathers in this area. So again, we're going to ditch that, come back to the center and start our feather. And please be a little neater than I am being, because this is quite messy. Ditch to there, ditch back. Do your next feather. Oh. And we'll finish this, sashing area or piecing. Ditch that, ditch this one. And again, you can make these feathers however you want. Ditch that, last feather. Finish up this little section. And then ditch that. So now my needle is here. I'm going to roll my quilt so that we can do this section. All right, so my needle's still down. I'm going to stitch down here, and then we're going to start that roller work. And then fill in with the swirlies. Okay, so after we do that ruler work, I would tie off, and then I'm going to do my continuous curve through this area, and my ruler work in this area, finish this section, and then I would roll again, and then proceed with the bottom section just like the top. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I will bring you back when I'm done, and I'll show you how we're going to stitch that outer border. Okay, so now we finished the body of the quilt, and we are on this part. So we're just going to start right here. We're going to drop our needle down, and we're going to start stitching the swirlies. We can fit all this in one pass. All right, and we're already at the bottom of the quilt. We're just going to do our swirlies. And again, this would be so much neater if we were stitching. And when we get up to here, about as far as we can go, we're going to leave our needle down. We're going to roll the quilt up. And we're going to continue these up. So this will make it like a continuous stitching of the border. You won't have any starts and stops. All right, leave your needle down, roll the quilt up, and we continue our curlies all the way around the top part of the quilt. Just making sure to keep them, trying, keep them as evenly spaced as possible. If you can't keep them evenly spaced, you can do one small, one big, one small, one big, and it makes it a little less noticeable if they're not all the same size. But make sure whichever you choose to do it the whole way around. Okay, and we'll get over to here. Again, it's about as far as we can go. Leave your needle down, and then roll the quilt, and then finish it off. And just tack it into where you started. So now the quilt is quilted. I really like how the curve of the feathers and the curve of the continuous curve really are cohesive. And even though we have some straight ruler work here, this curved ruler work pulls it all together. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.
Hi, my name is Ava Birch. Thanks for being here. So today's quilt that we have right here is called On Point Chain. And we have 5 on-point blocks with little 9-patch cornerstones. We have triple piece sashing and some setting triangles, end triangles, and a border. So this allows us a lot of different options. As always, the patterns I selected are just suggestions, and you can select your own if you like and play with a few different layouts, which for me is the fun part. I can decide which ones I like, different combinations. So let's get started. So let's start with these 5 on-point blocks here. I've selected this Fulton feather block. It's a free pattern that came with your patterns when you purchased your Statler or Ascent. So I've resized this already, so I can bring it in here and place it. And we all have different preferences. I like to have a little bit of spacing around the block design and my seam right here. But I love how these feathers fit really nice in those corner squares right here. So once I've placed the first one, I'm going to simply rubber stamp the designs and put them in the remaining one. Once I have placed my designs, I can take a look and make sure they're placed the way I like them. This one right here, I'm going to select it, select my Alt key and my arrow and move it just slightly. That's the small nudge, and you find those shortcuts in your help menu if you need to. I'm going to do the same with this design right here. And that looks pretty good. I really like that design because it adds some movement. I also found a half of that design. It came as a collection. That's also a free pattern. It's the triangle pattern. So again, I've sized it. I'm going to click on my space bar to rotate it and place it the best way I can. And then I'm going to again choose rubber stamp, click on my space bar to rotate it in the direction that I need it to be, and place it in the remaining triangles. That's going to look very pretty. So the next section we're going to work on is this cute little 9-patch. I've created an arc because I want to use this arc and draw pattern to draw a continuous curve design in this 9-patch block. And the way you can create that arc is I simply use draw arc, and then I made sure that I saved that arc as a point to point. And you find it right here in the project tab. So I'm going to select this arc and my draw pattern feature, and I'm going to be using the S key on the keyboard to turn on and off my snaps. I guess I should start out by turning it off. And I want to make sure I'm pretty precise when it comes to this, because my goal is to save this pattern for that 9-patch. Turn the snap back on as those endpoints can snap together. Now for the continuous curve, I want to be careful here because I don't want to close this off or I'm going to have a jump stitch. So now I'm going to go back down this row and I'm gonna finish this up. Okay, now that I've clicked out this 9 patch, I'm going to select the first arc and order join and combine. And then I would save this pattern because I don't want to repeat all of those steps for every one of the 9 patches. So I would go down on save. I would call it 9 patch orange peel, add my tags if I like to, and save and close. And then it appears the first one in this project tab. So now I can take my pattern and rubber stamp it again and place it in all the I can place it in all of my 9 patch blocks. And that looks really pretty. Now we have some half 9 patch blocks. So I repeated the same process again that I did for the full 9 patch in these little ones. And I created a pattern and I saved that pattern. It is right here. So I can bring this over and turn it with the space bar and scooch it into place. And then you guessed it, I'm going to rubber stamp this pattern and add it to the remaining half 9 patch blocks. And that's the nice thing about the rubber stamp feature. It stays on your mouse and you can rotate it easily with the space bar. Anytime you work on a image, there seems to be a little delay, so it's a little bit more tricky to place these patterns. And then I'll just check to make sure I like the placement, and then I can use my Alt and arrow key to nudge them into place. But they fit pretty nicely. Of course, when you're clicking this out on your quilt, you would click out the actual section on your quilt. So for the ending triangles, I decided I wanted to do a line design because we have a lot of frilly curly Q things going on, and I thought the lines will set it off real nice. So I created that simply by tracing with draw line the triangle and adding the lines in between and order joined and combined it. You may have to adjust your grid size so you have something where you can see that your spacing is good, but you can easily create a simple line design on your own. And then again, use rubber stamp to rotate it and place it in those corners. And that looks pretty nice. I think it's a nice contrast. I hope you agree. But of course, again, these are just options. You can put something else in there, or you can change the spacing. So all we have left in the body of the quilt is these sections right here, the sashings. And this is where I spend a little bit of time because I wanted to duplicate the lines from the corners and add them to the sashing, and then add the pearls in the center here. And I created the pearls by simply using draw line in the center of that middle sashing strip, and used apply to apply my pearl that you see here in the project tab. Now the trick was to make it all connect. So you have to watch where your start points are, but if you plan your lines and then the perimeter of this sashing area, this will stitch out continuously and saves you a lot of time. And then you can simply turn this the way you need to turn it and place it in those sashings. And yes, I'm using rubber stamp again to place the patterns. So now we have placed all the sashings, and of course I would make sure that they're placed perfectly. But this is just a mock-up in SAM, so it's not super critical. It's more important that you get your placement right on your quilt. So I'm going to change my grid size, and I'm going to draw a line, use draw line for my border, my top border. I should probably turn off my snaps. I always forget to turn off my snaps. And then with the line highlighted, I'm going to select my pearl. And this pearl was created so it's a point to point, because I'm going to use apply pattern with this pearl, and it's going to place my pearls perfectly within the space of my border. And you see, if this was a real quilt, there would be room enough for the binding. And I'm going to delete that line. I'm going to order join my pearls and combine them, and then I can again use rubber stamp and place those in the bottom part of the border, because we want to work as efficiently as we possibly can. So for the side borders, I need to use draw line again. Draw my line. highlight it and apply my pearls. Delete the line and order join. And combine and rubber stamp it to place the other side. And here we have it. We have a beautiful quilt layout, and now it's your turn to play with either these designs, create your own, have fun. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Dual Process and were inspired to create your own mock-ups with your patterns. We'll see you next time.